Okay, so what I'm going to do is make a quick video over quadratics to try to sum up everything in one short video. Now, what I've drawn here is on this side. This is what's called the parent function, and a quadratic is whenever your x has a squared on it. And when that happens, guys, it's no longer a line. It forms a graph like this, which is called a parabola. Okay, so some people call quadratics parabolas because that's what their graphs look like. Now, the important part of a parabola is looking at things like the vertex, looking at whether it's going up or whether it's facing down, because these graphs can look like, you know, anything. They can be shifted over, they can be shifted up, they can be reflected down. So what you want to do is whenever you're asked to graph a quadratic, it's always good to find the vertex, and a lot of times it's also good to find your intercepts. And that means both the X-intercepts and the Y-intercept. Like if I were to keep that going down, where would it cross the y-axis? Where would it cross the x? So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Okay, so what I'm done is I'm giving you a quadratic over here that's in what's called standard form, and whenever you see this, this is just going to be our guide to graphing a random quadratic, because you need to be able to identify the a, the b, and the c, which are just the numbers in the problem. Okay, so for an example, if I was asked to graph y equals, let's do like x squared minus 2x minus 3. So if somebody asked me to sketch that, well, I know it's going to look like a parabola. I just have to figure out where it is. So the first thing is to find the vertex. Now, if you're in this form, finding the vertex is pretty easy. You just use the formula minus b over 2a. And a, b, and c, you just relate to what is over here. So on this problem, the a is an invisible 1, the b is a -2, and the c is a -3. So notice I took the minus signs with them, okay, like negatives. And I'm just going to plug into this formula, minus b over 2a. So the opposite, so minus a -2 over 2 times the a. And when I simplify that, I'm going to get 2 over 2, or 1. So this number 1 is interesting. It's not your final answer because a vertex is a point, guys. It's an x and a y. And when you run this formula, what you have just found is the x value only. Now, to find that y value, if you're like, well, is there another formula? Well, no, there's not. What you do is you take the answer that you just got for x, and you plug it into the original function. So I'm coming down here, I'm going to take this original equation and I'm going to plug in the 1 that I just found. 1 squared minus 2 times 1 minus 3. And that's going to give me 1 minus 2 minus 3. I'm getting a -4. So what we've just found is that the vertex is at 1, -4. If we want, we can even start a graph right now. Okay, now this parabola, a lot of times you're going to be asked to decide if it's going to face up or face down. Now, I automatically know it's going to face up because you look at the leading term, and if the leading term is positive, then it's a happy parabola, so it's facing up. So it's going to look like a smile, think positive smile, and it's going to face up. But if I want to know exactly where, another good thing to find might be the y-intercept. The y-intercept can be found on any function by plugging in a 0 for x. So if I take that same equation and plug in a 0 for the x, that's a 2 times 0. Then what happens is I have 0 minus 0 minus 3. So it ends up being this last number in the equation. So I know that I'm going to cross the y-axis at -3. And that kind of helps me with how wide my parabola is. Like, I could technically sketch it right now. I could just kind of make it go through these 2 points. But to make for certain, what we want to do is find our x-intercepts. And to find our x-intercepts, you're supposed to plug in a 0 for y. And when you do that, you get this funky looking equation. So this is our original equation, and I've just plugged in a 0 for the y. this may look familiar to you, or it should. Your last chapter, you probably did factoring, okay? So whenever you have to solve something like this, a lot of times you're going to be able to factor it. And the way that I factor is I do guess and check method, which means I look for two numbers that multiply to make the last term and add together to make the middle term. So for me, 3 times 1 is 3. But how do I make a -2 when I add these together? Well, that's what's going to make it happen. A -3 times a 1 is a -3, but then a -3 plus a 1 is a -2. So this is how you factor, and then your teacher should have told you that once you factor, you set each parenthesis equal to 0, and then you solve. So +3 and -1 are my x-intercepts. And once I graph those on my graph, then I'm going to play connect the dots, and this just makes sense. So that is it, guys. Hopefully every single one of them is going to work out this way for you. If you get one where you look here and it doesn't factor, because remember sometimes these are prime, okay? If you get a prime one, you're going to learn something in class called the quadratic formula. And that's how you're going to do this part. But if it factors, factor it. Only use quadratic formula if it doesn't factor. And if you need a video over that, just let me know. Talk to you later.